I must say, I've been waiting for this episode for a very long time, ever since I saw that short storyboard clip back in July. The fact that the MLP staff were willing to talk about Scootaloo's difficulty with flying was most intriguing. They had hinted at this aspect before, but now that they were bringing it out in the open shows a lot of courage on the part of the writers. Even suggesting the possibility of a disability must be handled with great care, so I'm glad to see that the MLP staff were willing to take these kinds of risks in the show. But just how well were the writers able to handle this subject? Let's take a look. As the episode begins, Miss Cheerilee makes an announcement to her class about some special guests who will discuss the Equestrian Games. This makes for another nice bit of continuity, as I was rather worried that the MLP staff were going to introduce the Equestrian Games during Season 3 and not follow up on it. The fact that Miss Harshwinny makes a return and that these games are still going to happen certainly adds a few points to this episode's favor. And of course, she still has a very stuffy personality, even in front of children. She begins to explain to all these young ponies that they have a chance to carry the flag during the Equestrian Games. But the level of excitement in the room really starts to build when Rainbow Dash arrives and tells them about the fun part. Apparently Rainbow will be coaching these young ponies in order to find who is most worthy to perform this very important duty. Of course, Diamond Tiara wants to be picked, as well as the CMC, as Scootaloo in particular is already getting stars in her eyes. Even Snips and Snails make their attempt.
Hey! It could happen!
Rainbow Dash is still overly enthusiastic, and Miss Harshwinny is still trying to be stuffy and professional, so it makes for an entertaining contrast between the two characters that actually does work its way into the conflict later on. But what I find most interesting about this scene is when Rainbow Dash mentions that she carried the flag when she was a filly. And here I thought that Rainbow had always looked back on the Equestrian Games with regret, since they weren't being held in Cloudsdale like she had been hoping. But I suppose that the writers hadn't thought quite that far ahead when they were putting together Games Ponies Play. In the next scene, we see the CMC attempting to come up with an idea for a routine, and I was rather intrigued when I heard them talking about what's special about Ponyville. It's a place where different types of ponies live together as friends. This adds even more credence to the theory that Ponyville is much more the exception rather than the standard. When we look at other cities and towns across Equestria, the population seems to be primarily made up of one type of pony. Appaloosa and Manhattan seem to be primarily made up of earth ponies. Cloudsdale has an exclusively Pegasi population, although they actually do have a really good reason for that. And even though Canterlot does have a mix of unicorns and earth ponies, there don't seem to be quite that many Pegasi thrown in the mix. It seems that Ponyville really does stand out when it comes to having a mixed population. Which leads into the first new song of Season 4, Hearts as Strong as Horses. I must say that this piece really does have a catchy beat, with a lot of really enjoyable harmonies between the CMC, and some really great atmosphere. I'm not too thrilled about the lyrics though, as the chorus in particular seems rather repetitive. But the drums in the background really give this piece a unique sound, particularly when it comes to the end, as the drums can really stand out. I'd say that the song might have benefited from having a bit more drums and a little less melody. It would have given the piece a much more powerful feel to it, but as it is, I do think the song is growing on me. And that bit with Snowflake being afraid of butterflies is both surprising and hilarious. And here we go again. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon doing their usual routine of blank flanks. But this time Scootaloo actually stands up to them, which is really nice to see. It would have felt rather repetitive if the CMC were still falling apart at the seams just from the word blank flank. So this goes to show that the CMC are becoming stronger at standing firm in the face of criticism. That is until Diamond Tiara comes up with a new method of bullying. The CMC actually do put together something really impressive here. And although Rainbow tries to be enthusiastic, she has to remind herself to keep her emotions in check. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon also realize that the CMC do have something worthwhile here, and Diamond Tiara realizes that they need a new way to get under their skin. This next scene is a whole new level of low for Diamond Tiara. Seriously. I mean, she's been mean-spirited before, but this sort of behavior goes beyond teasing and reaches levels of lifelong emotional abuse territory. But it certainly proves to be effective, as Scootaloo decides that she has to start flying on her own. She feels the need to change up the routine entirely, all the while doing her utmost to fly. And by the next day, the CMC are too exhausted to perform as well as they did yesterday. When Rainbow Dash is talking about how yesterday's performance was better, and that they shouldn't try to fix what isn't broken, I'd like to think that the writers might have missed an opportunity here. Scootaloo could have very easily interpreted Rainbow's words as saying that Scootaloo shouldn't even try to fly, which could have led into a heartfelt moment between them later, as even Rainbow would have realized that she might have acted rather insensitive with her words here. But I still think that these next scenes work very well for the conflict. Given their lack of sleep and the fact that Scootaloo is trying to make the routine all about her, it is perfectly understandable as to why Applebloom is getting impatient and even upset over the whole situation. This makes for a more natural transition when the CMC decide to split up later on. If the writers had decided to just put in this later scene without the build-up earlier, it would have felt very out of place. Scootaloo is so determined. She has the mindset that if she just pushes herself hard enough that she will achieve her goal, which makes it rather heart-wrenching to see her come to the realization that she can't fly on her own. This scene could have been given a lot more time and a lot more emotion, and it certainly would have made it much more memorable. But given the restrictions that come with a cartoon intended for children, I can completely understand why the writers kept the emotion at this level. It gets the point across about how despite our best efforts, there may be some things in life that we will never be able to achieve, and I really have to applaud the writers for putting this kind of message here. It makes the following scenes with Rainbow and the rest of the CMC much stronger. We see just how hurt Scootaloo is when she's throwing away her posters and her scooter. She's on the edge of tears. This is a fantastic example of why show don't tell works so much better in a situation like this. We don't need to get a lengthy dialogue scene to understand how Scootaloo is tormented by this failure. Even just these few seconds are more than enough to express that emotion. Rainbow tells her that maybe she'll fly someday or maybe she won't, but she'll be awesome either way. Again, they could have filled this scene with a lot of back and forth dialogue that would have told us just how everyone is feeling here. But I honestly think it works better this way, because we can put ourselves in their shoes and easily understand what they're going through. As much as I would have loved to see a drawn-out scene heavy on the dialogue, after seeing how the writers put this together, I was very satisfied with the result. They managed to keep it simple enough for a child to understand without making it too heavy-handed. The emotion is still there, but it didn't have to be drawn out for it to be effective. We get a reprise of the earlier song as the CMC are pulled by Scootaloo on her scooter. All the way to the Crystal Empire. That's even more impressive. The competition was surprisingly short, and of course the CMC end up winning. Miss Harshwinny gets overly excited, and Rainbow Dash is the one who is staying professional. And the episode comes to an end with the CMC believing that they'll finally get their cutie marks in flag carrying. So just how well does this episode hold up? I've actually wanted to see the writers attempt this kind of story for a very long time, and I was worried that they might have put together another lesson about overcoming your weaknesses with effort. But I really love to see them adopting a very different kind of lesson that you don't often see in other media, particularly children's media. They may not have confirmed or denied the fact that Scootaloo may never be able to fly someday, but I am impressed with how well they managed to pull this off, talking about a very sensitive subject about dealing with a possible handicap, putting in the emotional weight without making the story too heavy-handed, using more of a show-don't-tell approach when presenting the inner turmoil. There may not have been that many funny moments in this episode compared to the rest of Season 4, but this episode is still very well done in my opinion. The CMC are continuing to grow by showing that they aren't so deeply affected by Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon anymore. They managed to show their flaws to each other and really learn some valuable lessons from the experience. Rainbow Dash had a very good teaching moment that didn't feel a bit out of place. And to top it all off, I've actually gained a deeper respect for these CMC-centered episodes. They still have high hopes of getting their cutie marks, but it didn't become the focus of the episode. Overall, I really liked Flight to the Finish. While not being as entertaining as some of the other episodes, it had a lot of heart in it, and will certainly be among the more memorable episodes for the CMC. In the meantime, though, I would like to hear your thoughts. Given what we've seen of Scootaloo's journey throughout the seasons, do you think giving her this possible handicap will be a good addition to her character? Do you think Rainbow's reactions and her subsequent teaching moment made for a good lesson? Did you enjoy this first song of Season 4, or did it leave you feeling less than thrilled? Are you looking forward to the Equestrian Games when it finally comes around? I would like to hear your thoughts on Flight to the Finish, and here's to hoping for some more expertly handled emotional moments in future episodes. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.